Former AEW producer Ace Steel was reportedly rehired by All Elite Wrestling, with a decision being made not to return him to the road at the last minute on Tuesday, reportedly leading to CM Punk's removal from the AEW Collision announcement and promotional materials. Details on that, plus how he worked remotely, and an update on CM Punk's status with All Elite Wrestling. Bryan Danielson reportedly will be assisting Tony Khan with creative for the AEW Collision brand. We've got an update on the ratings for this week's episode of AEW Dynamite on TBS, and it doesn't look too good for All Elite Wrestling. Tony Khan opens up on the venue selection for AEW All In London. The next Ring of Honor Pure title defense has been announced, and Sky Blue opens up about when she actually signed her All Elite Wrestling contract. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and the drama surrounding CM Punk just won't go away. And every single day, every single hour, it feels like we get a new angle to this story about his return to All Elite Wrestling, why he wasn't featured in the announcement or promotional materials for AEW Collision when the announcement was made at the Warner Media Discovery upfronts on Wednesday, Ace Steel's involvement in this, if Punk's coming back, the announcements of future shows, the premiere episode of Collision. There's so much to get into, and so much has already happened regarding CM Punk and All Elite Wrestling, but the latest chapter of the saga involving the two-time AEW World Champion and the company is this return, or lack thereof, involving AEW Collision. Now, a really interesting piece of reporting came out yesterday from Nick Hausman of House of Wrestling. Of course, Nick Hausman used to be part of Wrestling Inc. I personally know him. He's a fantastic reporter and a great guy. Has opened up on how actually AEW may have rehired Ace Steel months ago, and maybe this was part of CM Punk's return to AEW, plus part of the reason why Punk was removed from the promotional materials for AEW Collision. So at the Warner Brothers Discovery 2023-2024 upfront presentation on Wednesday, it was announced that AEW Collision will debut on TNT on June 17. The new 2-hour live pro wrestling show will feature top names in AEW like Samoa Joe, Miro, Thunder Rosa, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Andrade El Idolo. But one name that the show isn't promoting, at least not just yet, is CM Punk. Now, Punk's return to AEW and inclusion on the Collision roster have been buzzed about in pro wrestling circles for weeks now. When Punk wasn't announced as part of the show on Wednesday, it reportedly caught some within AEW by surprise. In the wake of the Second City Saint not being announced, speculation began to circulate that there were legitimate issues between the former world champion and AEW. PW Insider reported that there had been a falling out, or there had been an issue between CM Punk and the promotion. Now, one of those issues was said to be Ace Steel's status within the company. Apparently, at a recent sit-down meeting between Chris Jericho and CM Punk, Jericho floated the idea of bringing Ace Steel back into the AEW fold as a means to ease tensions and get everyone back to work and make everyone whole after the brawlout incident last year that involved CM Punk, Ace Steel, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks. Of course, Ace Steel infamously, allegedly bit Kenny Omega on the arm, causing a bruise that was later seen during Omega's tour of Japan. Now, House of Wrestling is reporting that they can confirm that Ace Steel was indeed rehired by AEW, quote, several months ago, but has not been actively working in the backstage area. Steele, of course, was terminated by the company shortly after the locker room altercation following AEW All Out, but was rehired shortly after. Upon Steele's rehiring, he was told that he would be working with Tony Khan, AEW's president, CEO, head of creative, and general manager, on creative in some capacity, but his presence backstage would upset some of the talent. So, for that reason, Steele has been working remotely for the company for the past few months. Now, there was an understanding in place that once AEW Collision debuted, Steele would return to the road for AEW, working as an agent on that brand. However, on Tuesday, the decision was made not to bring Steele back to the road with the promotion, and Punk learned of it shortly thereafter. Following that, reportedly, according to Nick Hausman, there was some miscommunication between lawyers, and subsequently, Punk was pulled from the Collision announcement. That said, Punk is indeed still with All Elite Wrestling, and it sounds like, according to Nick Hausman and House of Wrestling, he is motivated and wants to help the company's growth however he can. Punk's relationship with Tony Khan also appears to be on sound footing, meeting, so there doesn't appear to be no issues between those two parties, specifically CM Punk and Tony Khan, of course, the main people involved in all of this, and the communication is remaining open. So what Nick Houseman is essentially saying there is that there was a plan in place for CM Punk to be announced with AEW Collision. He was on the promotional materials. He was on a match graphic, as was reported by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, for a match against Samoa Joe. Ace Steel has already been rehired by AEW. He was going to be returning to the road as part of the Collision brand on Saturday nights, working as an agent for that show. And then for whatever reason, 24 hours before the announcement being made about AEW Collision, he was told that no, he's not going to be returning to the road. And maybe CM Punk learned of that and he wasn't happy about that. There was miscommunication between the parties, and then because of that, he was pulled from the announcement. But it doesn't mean that Punk's done with AEW. It doesn't mean Punk isn't going to be part of AEW Collision. There's a lot of money on the line here, so we should know more about this in the next few days. Certainly today, Friday's usually a big news day for the world of professional wrestling, so I'm sure we'll cover it several more times, probably today, tomorrow, and over the course of the next 7 days. But what are your thoughts about this, the latest chapter in this saga, now involving Ace Steel? It's not a case of CM Punk wanting Ace Steel to be rehired. He's already been rehired, and for whatever reason, at the very, very last minute, Tuesday, 24 hours, or maybe even less than 24 hours prior to the announcement of AEW Collision, a plan that was in place was pulled, and Ace Steel was informed he wasn't going to be returning to the road, which, as one would expect, would probably upset CM Punk, who probably had assumed that he was going to be working on Collision with his friend, with his person that he was involved in Brawl Out with. So what are your thoughts on this? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm sure you'll let me know your opinions, your thoughts, your theories. As always, I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say about that. Now, speaking of AEW Collision, we know that obviously there's been a bit of a creative shake-up in AEW in recent weeks and months, and when it comes to the creative for AEW Collision, it's going to involve one Bryan Danielson. Now, according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, AEW has a big name involved in helping creative. Bryan Danielson, according to Fightful Select, will be contributing in creative for the Collision brand, according to sources familiar with the situation. Danielson, it's not his first time working in a creative environment in pro wrestling. He had previously helped out in this capacity during his runs in WWE as well, especially when he was sidelined or retired. Those that Fightful have spoken to that worked with him said that he had great things to say about his demeanor in WWE when he was helping. Now, when it comes to the creative team, or the creative committee, if you will, in All Elite Wrestling, Tony Khan, Pat Buck, Will Washington, Sonjay Dutt, and QT Marshall comprise the team that largely are set to put together the shows, with Marshall and Dutt contributing heavily. Jerry Lynn, Dean Malenko, Christopher Daniels are all often providing creative input. As outlined in The Observer last week, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Jon Moxley, FTR, CM Punk all have also heavy input on their own programs. Of course, AEW Collision debuts on June 17. So Bryan Danielson will be involved for the AEW Collision brand. But what we are starting to see, certainly in All Elite Wrestling, is a creative team start to be put together. There's been lots of talks about Tony Khan being spread too thin, or Tony Khan trying to do too much when it comes to the creative for Dynamite, for Rampage, for Collision. So it does appear at this point there is somewhat of a creative committee being put together to help out and contribute to both shows, and that does consist of now Tony Khan, Pat Buck, Will Washington, Sonjay Dutt, QT Marshall, and Bryan Danielson, along with the other talents and other producers having their input as well. Is that a good thing, do you think, for AEW? Is that something that will benefit, the product will benefit from? Let me know your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below when it comes to that. Now, obviously, a lot of buzz has been about AEW Collision this week. Of course, the new Saturday night show is set to launch on June 17 and will reportedly feature a harder brand split than first initially thought. The promotional artwork for Collision features several top AEW stars who are speculated to be the top stars of the brand, including FTR, Samoa Joe, Miro, and Andrade El Idolo. AEW's Matt Hardy spoke about Collision on his Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast, where he said the move is great news for the company as it helps find a space for more talent on the roster. He said, quote, "I mean, it's great news for AEW, obviously, because it's going to equate to a bigger income and bigger television rights, which is going to help out the company and going to help the company grow. Also, the company has such a large roster, it's hard to put everyone on Dynamite and Rampage, so these extra 2 hours are going to help out all the talent find a place on the television show. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of it by far." Hardy continued on, noting how he believes the split will help create healthy competition within AEW itself, as well as increase general excitement around the shows. He said, quote, "My gut feeling tells me it's going to add to the excitement because I think it's going to be two pretty different rosters. The shows are going to look differently, so I think we could get a deal where the shows are going to almost compete against one another. I think there's times when Raw and SmackDown seem very different, and you're like, oh shit, SmackDown is better than Raw, or Raw is better than SmackDown. I think that kind of motivates everyone to work a little harder and be a little better. I think that goes from the in-ring wrestlers to people behind creative and the people booking the show and whatnot. So hopefully we have that effect from Dynamite and Collision." So, do you agree with what Matt Hardy is saying there? Is this a good thing for AEW, or is the hard brand split a bad thing for All Elite Wrestling? Does it dilute the product? Let me know your thoughts as always. Now, the ratings for AEW Dynamite this week on TBS weren't very good amid strong competition at the same time. AEW Dynamite was no match for the long-running rivalry between the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics, especially when both teams are competing in the NBA's Eastern Conference Finals. Showbuzz Daily is reporting that Dynamite drew its second lowest audience of the year, averaging 814,000 viewers overall against the Heat's 123-116 victory over the Celtics, a 7% drop from last week. The 18 to 49 demographic suffered a 13% drop from last week too. Year to year, Wednesday's viewership represents a 12% drop overall from last year and a 15% drop in the 18 to 49 demographic. Ultimately, the show ranked 7th in the overall cable rankings, well behind the NBA playoffs and Bravo's Vanderpump Rules. The news comes after Rampage suffered its worst ratings in the history of the program. Dynamite was bookended by the duo of talking segments this week, with Wardlow calling out Christian Cage to open the show and Don Callis explaining his portrayal of Kenny Omega to end the program. The most hyped part of the night came in the middle of the show, a heavily promoted announcement from Tony Khan about AEW's new program Collision, and a Falls Count Anywhere match between Chris Jericho and Roderick Strong that saw the two combatants battle throughout the arena and into the grass and dirt outside of the arena. The viewership suffered despite AEW being at the center of the news cycle for much of the Wednesday day, with AEW announcing the Collision at the Warner Bros. Discovery upfront, as well as the confusion over CM Punk's status with the show and the company in general. Nevertheless, despite the low ratings, the online professional wrestling database known as Cage Match remains one of the wrestling's most popular sources for results and statistics, something that Tony Khan himself has sourced. It's also become an outlet for wrestling fans and pundits to submit their ratings for matches, events, and the performers themselves. Two recent ratings caught the attention of AEW President Tony Khan. In his post on Twitter, Khan revealed that the two latest editions of Dynamite have garnered the highest back-to-back ratings in the show's history, according to fan voting conducted on Cage Match. The rating for the May 17 edition of Dynamite currently stands at 9.01 out of 10, while last week sits at 9.15 out of 10. Quote, "Thank you to all who watched AEW Dynamite last night," Khan tweeted. "I thought it was a great show, and it's been amazing to see such positive feedback from fans 2 weeks in a row. After 189 shows, 188 and 189 are the highest rated shows back-to-back by fans voting on Cage Match in Dynamite history." The last two episodes of Dynamite have continued the build towards AEW's upcoming Double or Nothing pay-per-view. This week's episode featured the return of Hangman Adam Page, which led to the announcement that the Elite will battle the Blackpool Combat Club in the Anarchy in the Arena match at Double or Nothing. 3 other matches were announced for the pay-per-view, including Jamie Hayter defending the AEW Women's Championship against Toni Storm, Wardlow putting his TNT title on the line against Christian Cage in a ladder match, and a 21-man blackjack battle royale for Orange Cassidy's International Championship. Khan last night also expanded upon the announcement of a new Saturday night show called Collision that will premiere next month on TNT. Now, one of the biggest events this summer, in addition to the debut of Collision, of course, is AEW All In at London's Wembley Stadium. Now, it was quite interesting, certainly, that All In's taking place on August 27 at Wembley Stadium in London, despite beliefs the UK debut for AEW would be at the Khan-owned Craven Cottage. Of course, Craven Cottage serves as the home for the Fulham FC football team that is owned by Shad Khan, with his son Tony also being involved as the director of football. With reportedly over 65,000 tickets already distributed for the event, more tickets have been sold than would have been even possible at Craven Cottage. Now, Tony Khan recently discussed his venue choice on Talk Wrestling, saying, quote, "Those are two of my favourite places in the world. Craven Cottage is literally a home to me. I would love to do any big event in Craven Cottage. Wembley offered several things that we just couldn't possibly do at the cottage. In this case, the load-in logistically at Craven Cottage was going to be pretty much impossible. It would have been really hard to make a big-scale event there based on how challenging it would be. Load set, the ring, and all of the elements for a big wrestling show into Craven Cottage. The cottage was built in 1879. We've done a lot of renovation, to say the least, on the riverside in recent years, but Wembley offered us a less challenging load-in and also the ability to sell many times more tickets. We've already sold twice as many tickets as we could have sold at Craven Cottage. I really wish that would have come off, but Wembley is also one of my favourite places in the world. This is, to be honest, my first choice of where to do the show, at Wembley Stadium. Of course, Wembley Stadium has a capacity of 90,000, while Craven Cottage has a capacity of 25,700. As has been the case for several weeks now, at the time of recording, no matches have been announced for the August 27 show, with AEW having Double or Nothing as their next major pay-per-view on May 28, that being next weekend. Now, let's switch gears here and talk about Ring of Honor. We've got an update on the next Ring of Honor Pure Championship defense by Shibata. AEW president and Ring of Honor owner Tony Khan has announced via Twitter that New Japan Pro Wrestling star Katsuyori Shibata's next Ring of Honor Pure Championship defense will be taking place very soon. Shibata will be defending the title against New Japan Strong star Alex Coughlin on June 1st on the episode of Honor Club, Ring of Honor on Honor Club. The episode is yet to be filmed, but according to Fightful, there will be a Ring of Honor taping whilst AEW is in Las Vegas, Nevada for a live broadcast of AEW Dynamite on May 24 and the Double or Nothing pay-per-view on May 28. It was after Coughlin and Shibata teamed together on the April 13 edition of Ring of Honor on Honor Club and defeated the Workhorsemen when Coughlin challenged Shibata to a title match. Shibata's last title defense was against Christopher Daniels on the April 6 episode of Ring of Honor on Honor Club. Shibata has been the champion since defeating Blackpool Combat Club's Wheeler Yuta at Supercard of Honor. It's his first reign as the champion. Before losing the title in March, it was Yuta's second title reign. Yuta became the champion after defeating Daniel Garcia at Ring of Honor Final Battle on December 10, 2022. Finally, Sky Blue. We know that she's All Elite. In April, it was announced that Sky Blue was now officially All Elite after receiving a graphic and announcement on Twitter from AEW president Tony Khan. This news, however, raised eyebrows amongst fans due to the 23-year-old already competing in the company for almost 2 years prior to that point. Now, speaking on the AEW Unrestricted podcast, Blue discussed her official signing and contract situation prior to April. She explained, quote, "I cried a lot when I got the All Elite graphic because I remember my first extra work was the pandemic days in Jacksonville, and I remember being terrified. I remember being an extra in the crowd shaking, and I was actually, my first day of extra work was Queen Amita's first day of extra work too, which was really freaking awesome. But I remember sitting there and we're like, crap, that's going to be us. We're sitting in the crowd. We're going to have to go in that ring. I remember they told me my first match was against Britt Baker. I was like, oh, it's just Britt Baker, and then this is Dustin Rhodes. I wasn't back until All Out 2021 that I got signed, and then to see it go from there, I remember cheering in the crowd to 2 a.m. or whatever it was to get in the graphic and being able to, I FaceTime my mum because Christopher Daniels had told me, he's like, hey, yeah, they want to put a graphic out today. I just texted her like, hey, just be prepared for something, and she's like, what the hell does that mean? She's spamming my phone while I was in the makeup chair, so I FaceTimed her, and I just sent her the picture of the graphic because Twitter put it out first, and she was crying, screaming on the phone, and it made me cry. I'm sitting in the makeup chair, I'm trying not to cry, I put makeup on my face, I'm going to ruin it, because I never thought I was going to make it to that point, because I wanted to do this for so long, and AEW has been the dream company since I was running around on the indies, so it was the fact that he was like, yeah, it's for real. I was like, oh, actually for real, like what? Sky Blue's official AEW debut came 2 years prior to her official signing, wrestling Britt Baker in a losing effort on AEW Dark. Despite Dark and Dark Elevation being scrapped recently due to the revamped deal with Warner Bros. Discovery, the addition of AEW Collision, as well as the continued presence of both Rampage and Ring of Honor television, still allows young stars such as Sky Blue plenty of opportunities to shine. So Sky Blue is officially All Elite, but actually she had been signed for quite a while prior to that. But there you go, guys. It's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below. Remember, you can join the WN365 roster by clicking that join button, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.